So, Ilhan Omar, she asked Secretary of State Blinken about the JCPOA, about why there are still sanctions on Iran. I'm just going to play the clip and then we'll discuss it further, okay?
Human Rights, Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and I apologize, Mr. Secretary, if I'd missed if this question was asked of you. I know we've been talking about Iran quite a lot. It seems like there's a kind of a stalemate with Iran negotiations, as both sides have been waiting for the other side to make the first move. It is a plain fact that we're the ones who left the deal. Why shouldn't we be the one that make the first move to rejoin?
Thank you. A couple of things on that. First, as you noted, we've been very clear that the path to diplomacy is open, and we're fully prepared to engage on it. And the President said repeatedly that if Iran comes back into compliance, we will too, and then we will try to work on the other issues that divide us, including lengthening and strengthening the agreement and dealing with these other issues that we just discussed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary. If we are not re-entering the deal, how do we expect them to be in compliance? Shouldn't that happen first before we ask them to be in compliance?
The challenge is you just can't re-enter the deal by flipping a switch. We pulled out of the deal 3 years ago. The Iranians have unfortunately moved further and further away from their own compliance, and so there are and there would be challenging issues to work through that require actually talking about it that are necessary. That's why when the European Union invited all of the parties, or in our case, former parties to the deal, to start having that conversation, we immediately said yes. The Iranians have said.
Okay, so first of all, good on her. Good on her, because she immediately, he was trying to give her the platitude salad, and she immediately cut him off. She's like, hold on a second, we quit the deal. Why? How can we ask Iran to, recomply with the deal, which they are. And yet, we don't want to lift sanctions, and we're asking them to take the first step. It's absurd. And then, because it's true, right? They say that Iran is violating the deal because it has increased the number of centrifuges. It went past 3.67% in uranium enrichment. Things like that. But they don't tell you that in the Iran nuclear deal, it says the way to solve a dispute, you go to the Joint Commission, and then the foreign ministers will get involved, and then you go to the UN Security Council. And so if none of that works, then the party that, feels that the deal has been violated, they don't have to fulfill their agreements anymore. And in this case, that's Iran. Right? And it says in the agreement, it says if Iran has sanctions reimposed on it, Iran will take that as reason to not follow the deal. That's literally what you fucking did. Both of those conditions, right? The US, there was non-performance, Trump quit the deal, and then he put sanctions. So Iran is well within its right to not fulfill the limits imposed on its program. And it always did it bit by bit. It didn't just go back to the drawing board and just throw the deal out. No. It first increased number of centrifuges. Okay, then the percentage of uranium enrichment. And then it said, look, we're going to give you another 2-month time frame to get back in the deal, right? From this law that they passed in the Iranian parliament in December, the Majlis. They passed a law saying that if in 2 months, because they knew that means Biden will be inaugurated by 2 months. So they gave him time. If in 2 months there's no sanctions relief, we're going to quit abiding by the additional protocol. The additional protocol allows IAEA inspectors to come in anywhere. They can go anywhere they want to inspect, nuclear sites, and it allows them 24/7 surveillance. Right? They have these special seals. So they said we're going to give you 2 months. Doesn't happen, we're leaving that. And even then, the IAEA General Director, Director General, he flew to Tehran on February 21st, and he made a new deal. He said, you keep that aside. You keep the footage aside for 3 months. So they're giving Biden another 3-month window, right? And not just Biden, obviously, but the European powers to try and give them sanctions relief because of U.S. sanctions, which are unilateral. The EU, France, Britain, Germany, and of course other countries all across the world, they won't deal with Iran because they're afraid of U.S. sanctions, right? So they're saying, you figure something out, you give us sanctions relief, whatever it is, or we're ripping up all this data in 3 months. You're not going to get that footage. So they're being as lenient as possible. They're trying to be as diplomatic as possible. And this motherfucker sits here and says like, oh, well, you know, the situation has changed. And yeah, it changed because you fucking assassinated one of their generals. Nuclear scientist was assassinated. You're accusing them of building a weapons program when they don't have a fucking nuclear weapons program. You know, you're saying that now you heard him. He said, we want to expand the deal. What does that mean? That's Trump talk. And the only difference is that Trump was very explicit. It means they want to cap their ballistic missiles program, which has nothing to do with nukes. Although, yes, of course, you can arm nukes on a ballistic warhead, but that's not the point here. They don't have nukes. Israel is afraid of that, and they were assassinating scientists in Egypt, you know, in the 60s who were working on Egypt's ballistic missile program because they're afraid that these missiles have, you know, they have long range. So that's number one, and that has nothing to do with nukes. That's their defense program. That's their right. And number two, they don't want Iran supporting Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Iraq to resist occupation. So he's towing the same position as Donald Trump. And whose position is this really? Is it really Donald Trump's position? It's Israel's position. Israel wants that shit, right? And Israel got so many favors from Donald Trump, one of them being the fact he quit the fucking deal. And I mean, Blinken, Kamala Harris, Biden, all these people, they're huge friends with AIPAC, right? They are one and the same. There's no differentiation there, right? Joe Biden proudly says, I'm a Zionist. Kamala Harris goes and speaks at their conferences, right? So, and Blinken was even saying like they wouldn't even change Trump's recognition of the Syrian Golan Heights, recognize them as Israeli, even though they've been illegally annexed and taken away from Syria. So they're keeping exact same policies as Trump, but just saying it differently. And Ilhan Omar's calling him out on his bullshit, and I love it because this is good, right? She's trapping him like, no. We quit the deal. The U.S. quit the deal. How can we ask them to go first? We have to get back into the deal. Right? Because again, I really need you to understand this point. Whenever you read in the media, they say Iran is breaching the deal. Iran violated the deal. Iran has been following the deal to the fucking letter, right? Even when they go past 3.67% to 20% uranium enrichment, whatever they do, they're allowed to do that because that is literally the dispute resolution mechanism that is outlined in the fucking deal in Article 3637, right? So they're purposely trying to frame it as if Iran doesn't want to sit down. And here Blinken, he says, look, our European partners invited us to sit down with Iran and Iran refused. No. You know that Iran's going to refuse because it's a very easy way to fix this. You lift the fucking sanctions. You violated the deal. You quit the deal and put back sanctions. The whole point of the fucking deal was to get rid of sanctions. You violated the deal. It's that simple. This is like how any basic legal contract, legal agreement works. If one party does not fulfill their end of the deal, the other party is under no obligation to fulfill their end of the deal. This is absurd. Every basic contract works like that. And what's astonishing is that a lot of people don't see how Iran holding up its part of the deal, right? Having the 24/7 live feeds, the special SEALs, IAEA inspectors fanning through the country, right? This verification process, it's there. Right? Iran is subject to verification to make sure it's holding up its end of the deal. The United States is not. So how is that a fair deal to begin with, right? It's quite unfair if you think of it that way because Iran is scrutinized, right? They have the most thorough weapons inspection program in the world. I mean, there's no country on the face of the planet that has so many safeguards in place and inspections and verification systems to make sure that there are no nuclear weapons. If there's like one country on earth where you can be sure there are no nuclear weapons, it's literally Iran because of how much data we have, how much surveillance, how much verification have been carried out there. It's true. So this asshole is pretending now that they have reneged on their deal. No, they've never done that. That's absurd. It's the United States who did, and their European partners for not, going along with it and not actually putting their foot down. So that's very, very important to underline because it debunks this entire mainstream media narrative, which is just carrying water for the U.S. regime, be it Trump or be it Blinken, right? So they are towing the exact same position as Trump, but they're just trying to pretend like they're being diplomatic. It's just an act, right? Scott Ritter says the JCPOA was never meant to last, right? The only point of it was to make sure there's a buffer, like if in case the deal fell apart, Iran would always be a year away from having enough material for weapon. But even then, it's like you can't build a nuke without someone realizing. So I'm going to upload the full interview with Scott Ritter. Again, he was the UN weapons inspector in Iraq from 91 to 98. He knows his shit better than anyone. And he will explain it to you and extremely thoroughly. So that's great. But let me just play the last minute of this clip with Ilhan Omar and Blinken. Let's go finish it to the end.
Said no. And really, the ball is in their court to see if they're interested in pursuing diplomacy.
No, it's in your court.
We are.
Appreciate that. Why haven't you lifted the sanctions that the Trump administration placed on the ICC staff, including the prosecutor Fatou Bensouda?
We're currently reviewing those sanctions. We want to make the best determination we can about the best way forward in terms of engaging the ICC. We discussed a little earlier our deep concerns about some of the ICC's efforts to exert jurisdiction in areas where we believe they don't or should not have it. But it would also be good to have a productive relationship with the ICC, and it's something that we're reviewing.
So are you saying there is legitimacy to the sanctions that were placed under Trump on the ICC?
No, all I'm saying is that it's something that's under review, and at the same time, we have real concerns about some of the assertions. Certainly a common view that there needs to be accountability.
I do appreciate that, Secretary. I would like to get a clear answer on why the sanctions aren't removed. I mean, having concerns don't actually respond to why the sanctions aren't removed at the moment.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
No, just to finish up, I'd be pleased to talk to you once we complete our review and work through what we've agreed to.
What the fuck does that even mean? Gibberish. Yeah, I'd be pleased to look through the what we've agreed to. What the fuck are you saying? Look, man. There are things I really disagree with Ilhan Omar about, particularly her vote against recognizing the Armenian genocide. That's personal to me. But and I don't like the way that the squad is acting, towards Biden. But here I have to give her credit, man. This is good. Who else has had the balls to actually say this stuff to Blinken, right? She is asking the right questions. The ICC. So let me translate Blinken's answer. He's talking about Israel. He said, we have some concerns about, the jurisdiction that the ICC wants. He's talking about Israel, right? Because Israel is being investigated for war crimes now. And not just Israel, by the way, because Netanyahu wants you to believe that, they're being personally targeted. First of all, look, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, investigates people, not countries. Okay, so military officials, leaders. And moreover, it's also investigating officials from Hamas, from the Palestinian Authority. So it's not some one-sided thing. Okay? But of course, if you listen to Blinken, you listen to the US media, you would never know that. So Fatou Bensouda, who's the chief prosecutor of the ICC, she's just on her way out now. I think in June her mandate is up, and then someone else will be elected or selected to replace her. And there are a few candidates, but it's not just her, by the way, that was sanctioned. So Trump did this, I think, last year in June as well, or was it August? I can't remember. It was in summer. But Pompeo announced sanctions on Fatou Bensouda and the head of the judiciary. So Mocho Choco is his name. And he was sanctioning them. Trump was sanctioning the chief prosecutor and head of the judiciary because they were investigating war crimes in Afghanistan, right? So even though the United States is not a party to the Rome Statute, which formed the International Criminal Court, the victim, which in this case is Afghanistan, is. And that's enough for the ICC to go and investigate something, right? You don't need the aggressor to be a part of the Rome Statute. Israel has also refused to join. Reasons are pretty obvious why. And they thought they were very fucking smart because they gambled that, again, this is in 1998 that they formed they had the Rome Statute signed, right? And then the Israelis, they thought, okay, well, great, we won't join that because then we'll get screwed for what we're doing to Palestinians. And they also thought that, well, the Palestinians don't have a state. So the aggressor, which is Israel, and the victim, which is Palestine, are both removed from the Rome Statute in this context. And so that they thought they were safe. Well, what the ICC decided just a few weeks ago is that it will expand jurisdiction to occupied Palestine. So now the victim, Palestine, is inside the ICC's jurisdiction. They can investigate Israel. And that's why they're fucking furious because their gamble did not work, right? They thought they're so fucking smart. And Blinken here, that's what he's concerned about. It's the war crimes in Afghanistan. He's another policy of Trump that he's keeping. Another one. And then he's also concerned about his friends in Israel, of course, right? Because you know, what more do I need to say? What more do I need to say? And so that's why I refused to give a correct answer. And it's so astonishing, again, how they want to convince you that Biden is different from Trump. I mean, even me, I'm a bit surprised, a tiny bit, that, you know, to the degree of which all of these policies are still fucking in place. It's at 99.9%, right? Of everything, domestically, I mean, internationally, the sanction, it's everything. It's almost fucking identical. And it's bewildering that people are trying to justify this shit. They're carrying water for this mass murdering piece of shit. So, you know, Secretary Blinken over here, he's just a Mike Pompeo with more charisma or less charisma, you decide. But he's Mike Pompeo with a mask, definitely, just as Biden is Donald Trump with a mask. They're the same fucking brand of asshole. Okay, that's it. Just a slightly different blend. But yeah, props to Ilhan Omar, because she's not just been doing this sit down with grilling a Blinken over here on I think it was early March 11th. But also, for example, she is actually going down to the border, right? Because AOC, for example, went down to the border because she was so concerned about the kids in cages, rightfully so, under Trump. But now she hasn't said a word about it. I mean, she tweeted two things, I think, saying that this will never be acceptable under any administration, but she won't actually call out Biden. And she hasn't said anything since we've seen the pictures of the kids in cages, right? In the containers, in the plastic sheets, whatever you want to call it. That shit is not acceptable. Those conditions are appalling. And so she hasn't said a word about journalists also not being allowed in. She hasn't said a word about that. Ilhan Omar, on the other hand, she is going down there, right? AOC did a photo shoot. I don't know if she's going to do a photo shoot this time, but Ilhan Omar at least is consistent, right? She's at least consistent. She's asking tough questions here to Blinken. Good. That's the bare minimum. I wish everyone were like that, right? I wish that there were actually consequences as well, because when Donald Trump bombed Syria, Ilhan Omar, again, one of the only people actually said anything about it. Again, being consistent, just like they were talking about Trump doing it in 2018 over this lie about Duma. AOC ain't saying nothing now. Kamala Harris ain't saying nothing now. All of a sudden, the Constitution doesn't matter, right? But Ilhan Omar's consistent, and she also called out the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force, which is their blank check to go and do whatever they want. So she's actually saying something. Now, my critique is that what are you doing about it? Right? What are you doing about it? Are you actually going to repeal it? Are you going to push legislation to repeal it? Are you going to do something, campaign for it? I mean, you're the politician. You got elected to do that, not me. So it's your job, to advocate for that, because you are the one who is in Washington, D.C. Now, again, I'm giving you credit, but I'd like to see a bit more, especially on that front, because you have to understand the AUMF of 2001, when they invaded Afghanistan, that has been their legal justification. Although, again, just because something is legal inside the U.S. does not make it legal overseas, especially when you're invading another fucking country. That is another country, not your country. So your laws do not mean shit in another country. But they've been using that. Every president since Bush has been using the AUMF of 2001 as a blank check to fight the war on terror, right? And, they just have to accuse you of having something to do with 9/11, and that's justification enough to torture you, kill you, assassinate you, whatever. Right? Doesn't have to be true. None of it is true. But you will never see Congress actually impeach someone for doing that shit. Right? Even Donald Trump used the AUMF of 2002, which was for Iraq, to justify his assassination of Soleimani, who's an Iranian general on his way to meet the Iraqi government. Right? So he killed an Iranian general in Iraq using the AUMF of 2002. I mean, Jesus, how can you even... I mean, even that, people were saying, like, what the fuck? How can you make that reach? But did you see them impeach him for it? Never. You could have easily fucking impeached him for that. Do you think they'd do that? No way. Never. For empire, for corporate handouts, never. Right? They got him over a fucking phone call. And then the erection, as Chuck Schumer says, Donald Trump incited the erection. But never the real shit that they could have gotten him immediately or within the first week, as Chris had just pointed out. They could have impeached Trump within his first week in office just for the emoluments and profiting while in office. In the first fucking week. They let him do that. They let him get away with all this shit. They only got rid of him, at the end because he was just becoming too loud. That's it. He was drawing too much attention. Now they have Biden, Blinken, all these people who preach diversity, who are, they put the mask back on and they do the same thing, literally the same policies as we just pointed out, and say it with a nice, with some decorum. That's it. But yeah, props to Ilhan Omar. I wish everyone were a bit more like her, and I hope that they push this further because again, it's good to grill them. Now hold them accountable, right? Hold them accountable for it.